I've been told tonight we're going to be looking at Bhagavad-gita, chapter 16, the divine and demoniac natures, text 20. Now, before we go into this particular verse, let's discuss something about the overview of this chapter, and especially its title, the divine and demoniac nature. Do you consider yourself divine? Most persons would say, well, not quite. But do you consider yourself demoniac? Oh, definitely not. What could this chapter be referring to? Especially as we get near the end. Text 20. Asarim yonam apana mudha janmani janmani mam aprayaiva konteya tato yant yaramam gatim. Attaining repeated birth among the species of demoniac life, O son of Kunti, such persons can never approach me. Gradually, they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. We'll hear the purport. It is known that God is all-merciful, but here we find that God is never merciful to the demoniac. It is clearly stated that the demoniac people, life after life, are put into the wombs of similar demons, and, not achieving the mercy of the Supreme Lord, they go down and down, so that at last they achieve bodies like those of cats, dogs, and hogs. It is clearly stated that such demons have practically no chance of receiving the mercy of God at any stage of later life. In the Vedas also, it is stated that such persons gradually sink to become dogs and hogs. It may be then argued in this connection that God should not be advertised as all-merciful, if he is not merciful to such demons. In answer to this question, in the Vedanta Sutra, we find that the Supreme Lord has no hatred for anyone. The placing of the asuras, the demons, in the lowest status of life is simply another feature of his mercy. Sometimes the asuras are killed by the Supreme Lord, but this killing is also good for them. For in the Vedic literature, we find that anyone who is killed by the Supreme Lord becomes liberated. There are instances in history of many asuras, Ravana, Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu, to whom the Lord appeared in various incarnations just to kill them. Therefore, God's mercy is shown to the asuras if they are fortunate enough to be killed by him. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranditanye Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasavi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What do you think of when you think of a demon? What comes to your mind? Some person with horns coming out of the head and a tail with something at the end of the tail? When you study this chapter, you find out that a demoniac person is someone who has no inclination for spiritual life in such a determined, stubborn way. Someone who is determined to cling to the energy of illusion and try to squeeze out some temporary seconds or moments of so-called happiness, no matter what the price is. Now you might say, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, you have to do something in life. What's wrong with persons apparently innocently trying to enjoy some happiness, even though it's momentary. What's wrong with that? Doesn't mean they're a demon. They may be spiritually unaware, you would say, right? But doesn't mean they're demoniac. When you think of someone who's demoniac, you think of like Dracula or Frankenstein. Some vampire. And of course, we would never think of ourselves as being demoniac. Generally, we consider ourselves that we're not the greatest saints, but nor are we the greatest sinners. We could be better, and there are a lot of people worse than us. That's generally how we size up the situation. So what is this talk about? Divine and demoniac nature. How does it relate to us? Earlier in this chapter, we heard that the divine qualities lead to liberation, freedom from material existence, and the demoniac qualities lead to bondage. You become bound to the cycle of repeated birth and death. Are we innocent? We're neither divine nor demoniac. You have to look at the general thrust of life. We have to take a courageous look at the general direction of our life. Where are we heading and why? So, are we trying to say that you either believe in Krishna or you're going to hell? Is that what the bhakti knowledge is all about? Repent before you burn. No, the knowledge in this chapter is much more sophisticated and comprehensive than that. You attain a particular destination according to your consciousness and activities. If your consciousness and activities are demoniac, you attain a demoniac destination. Now, why would you want a demoniac destination? And what does it mean? First of all, a demoniac destination means where there is very little, no opportunity for reviving your God consciousness. You can take birth in situations like that. Why would that happen? Because of your own desire, our own desire. Earlier in Bhagavad-gita, you might have come across the verse, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto mattasmitya jnanam apohanam cha. Krishna says, I'm seated in your heart as the supersoul, and from me in your heart as a supersoul comes all knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So, what we can remember, what we can forget, what we can know, is not completely up to us. So how does this work? If you want to remember Krishna, then as the supersoul in the core of your heart, Krishna arranges for that. Just like this class here is an opportunity for increasing our remembrance of Krishna. And when we're at home and chanting Hare Krishna, that brings about association with Krishna. Some living entities want that. But not everyone. Some want to completely forget about any genuine spiritual inclinations. Some want to be completely dedicated to squeezing out some temporary pleasure from the temporary material body and mind and the temporary material world. You can't do that without Krishna's help. So please think about this. You can't remember Krishna without his help, and you can't forget him without his help. This is how tiny we are. We think, oh, what I remember, what I know, what I forget, it's all up to me. my powers of cognition, my academic intelligence, my New York street smarts. It's all up to me. Everyone likes to present themselves as self-made, yes? Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You ever try to do that? Next time you put some boots on that have some straps, try to pull yourself up. It's an expression that actually means nothing. Some people say it means nothing economically also, but anyway. We want to be self-reliant. How can it be that whatever we know, forget, or perceive is all dependent on a higher power, a superior personality? The bhakti knowledge teaches us this. You're powerless on your own. But material existence gives you the impression that it's all up to you. Everything is resting on your shoulders. You've got to compete. You've got to run the race. What's the worst thing that can happen when you're racing? When you're running a race?
Stumble and fall.
Yeah. Worse than losing is stumbling and falling. What happens when you stumble and fall?
You get left behind.
It's painful.
Not only are you left behind, you stumble and fall, everyone tramples you and runs over you. So that's the fear in the big city. You're going to stumble and fall in the race and be trampled. So you want to be self-reliant. You want to be independent. Everything should be up to me. I'm in control. But actually, Bhagavad-gita is teaching us that that kind of notion is demoniac. Demoniac? Are you trying to say I have horns and a tail? Carrying a pitchfork? No. A lifestyle that takes us away from Krishna is demoniac. But maybe there's a better word so you can more comfortably get your consciousness around the kind of syndrome or behavior. Perhaps we can use the word depraved. That easier to understand? Depraved mentality, depraved behavior. When you think of someone depraved, you think of like a pervert, or just someone who takes sadistic pleasure in others' misery. So how could it be then that we could be victimized by demoniac or depraved consciousness? You could be very well-mannered, very stylish, very courteous, but what is the thrust of your life? That's what this chapter is pointing out. If you're simply taking pride in your material abilities, if you're aiming for lust, which results in anger and greed, then the general focus of your life is depraved. Later in this chapter, Krishna will explain Jivaram Narakasya. There are three portals, three gateways to hellish situations: lust, anger, and greed. So let's consider why lust leads to anger and greed. It would seem that lust should be an innocent affair, yes? You desire, things happen, temperatures rise. Well, it's part of life. So why then does Krishna point out lust, anger, and greed? Is this some kind of old-fashioned morality? meant to make you tremble in your shoes. Lust, anger, greed. Is this just something that fire and brimstone preachers would recite? No, try to understand scientifically, according to the bhakti science. Lust can't exist in of itself. Why? Because it's never satisfied, and therefore there is anger. This is explained by Krishna in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad-gita. You contemplate the objects of the senses for your gratification and enjoyment and entertainment, and then lust develops. This hankering, I've got to have it. This yearning, I want it, I want it. From lust, though, anger arises because you're frustrated. The lust can't be fulfilled, and therefore you get angry. You get angry at yourself, at other persons. You get angry at the world. So all the violence and wars that you see in the world are actually outgrowths of individual lust. That individual lust becomes magnified on a societal scale. And then you have feverish economic activity resulting in someone getting angry, some nation getting angry, and then there's a collision, individually and collectively. So once we understand that lust is not something innocent, just something personal, once we see the whole picture, then we can start to really get an insight on what is depraved behavior. Otherwise, we think, what is this talk about divine and demonic nature? How does it really relate to me? I'm just an ordinary Joe or Jane, living the life, trying to pay the bills, trying to pay the rent. What is all this exotic talk about divine and demoniac nature? But then when we zero in on those three concepts, more specifically those three behavioral symptoms, lust, anger, and greed, we can start to then get a grip on what is the depraved situation. We've grown up in a society that presents to us that lust is natural, it's innocent, it's one of those things, it's part of life. What's the name of that famous travel writer who recently took his own life? Yeah, he had a very famous statement. Your body is not a temple. It's an amusement park. Enjoy the ride. Tragic. Your body is not a temple. It's an amusement park. Enjoy the ride. That notion, according to Bhagavad-gita, is considered depraved. You say, why? What's wrong with the amusement park, enjoying the ride? You have to understand the purpose of having a human body. Misuse of that genuine human purpose is considered depraved. So when you have a society that is constructed in such a way that persons are influenced to forget the real purpose of human life, that's called a depraved society, no matter how technologically advanced it is. You have to look at the purpose of everything. Where is it heading? Don't become bewildered by all the flashy technology, the sophisticated weaponry, the cyber world. Don't become bewildered by that. You've got to look at where's it all going? And where is it taking people? So this is what Bhagavad-gita is equipping you with, such a vision to see where are things going. Where are you going individually? Where is society going individually? And how should you deal with that So it's true that most people are innocent. It's innocent meaning misled. There are some persons, very few, who are truly trying to be divine, not just by religious belief. I believe this. What do you believe? Oh, you're not divine. I'm divine. No. What about the lifestyle? Bhagavad-gita is a handbook for lifestyle engineering. How to transform your lifestyle so that you get higher experience, higher realization. You are known to be divine or depraved by your behavior. If a society simply drags persons in the most sophisticated, complicated way toward delusion about their spiritual aim in life, that society is rejected by the authorities of Bhakti Yoga. In other words, it's not an innocent thing to be caught up in a wave that's carrying you far away from where you should be. So yes, most persons are innocent, meaning they get influenced by what's happening around them. But still, although innocent, we get classified as depraved because we're being swept away. How to make our life stronger so that we actually have shelter. Otherwise, we'll be swept away by the storm. And that storm is depraved because it's causing persons to be deviated from their ultimate goal, their real goal in life. Now, let's look at things from another angle. Why is there evil? Why do people do evil things? There are two ways of approaching this. One is the prevalent psychological way. If you studied psychology, this is the normal approach. That due to your individual flaws, due to your individual personal complexities, you've done this, you've done that. In other words, you're an apple that has some rotten spots. And therefore, you've caused some problems. But there's another way of looking at the situation. The way of social psychology. That why simply focus on the few bad apples? What about the barrel that holds the apples? In other words, instead of considering everything as individual, let's look at the overall structure that's encasing the individuals, the barrel that's holding the apples. Maybe that barrel is influencing people to act in a certain way. But you're putting all your attention on the rotten spots on the apples. And you're not looking at the structure, the barrel. Another way of considering this is the difference between, let's say, an ordinary medical practitioner and a public health doctor. An ordinary medical practitioner is concerned with your individual ailments. But a public health doctor is concerned with, well, what in the atmosphere or the environment is causing the outbreak of this disease? So, which stance does Bhagavad-gita take? It takes both. It considers the individual as well as the environment influencing the individual. What is sweeping you away? This has already been discussed in Bhagavad-gita. A famous verse, Karanam guna sangasya sadasa yoni janmas. You're influenced by particular modes of material nature due to your associating with them. And then you're swept away. But even though you're swept away by these powerful modes of nature, you get the blame. Just like if you visit a place that has a contagious disease, a pandemic, you'll get the blame because people will say, why did you go there? Well, I'm just an individual. I'm doing my individual pursuits. No, but you went to a place where there's a pandemic. Why did you do that? I'll give an example of how we can be swept away. And even though we didn't intend to get caught up in certain situations, things happen because we're in the wrong place. We're subject to the wrong influence. In this way, I hope you can see how the difference between the divine and depraved nature, divine and demoniac nature, concerns the individual and the influences acting on the individual. This happened, maybe 15 years ago in Detroit. There's an island in the Detroit River between Detroit and Canada. And it's one of those islands that has parks on it. Small island. And so on the weekends, people like to drive there over the bridge to this island for parties. So there was this tragic case of a 18-year-old girl. She was driving her car to the party island. And so many persons were on their way there that it was bumper to bumper traffic on the little bridge going to the island. Gridlocked. So accidentally, she touched her car to the bumper of the car in front of her. And the guy gets out in a rage and starts attacking. Ultimately, he picks her up and throws her over the side of the bridge into the river. She couldn't swim. She drowned. It's horrible. The whole city was outraged. How could someone do this horrible thing? Yes, it was horrible. But there was one question no one in the media raised. Shockingly, no one in the media raised this one question. Why is this 18-year-old girl out alone, 2 a.m. in the morning, amidst such a rowdy crowd? Not that this justifies what happened to her. Certainly not. It's horrible. But at the same time, what inspired her to be at the wrong place at the wrong time? So that's an example to show that we have to consider our individual inclinations and the atmosphere that we are swimming in. So Bhagavad-gita is teaching you both things. You're a tiny living entity, subject to enormous influences. How are you going to situate yourself? In this way, an innocent person can be caught in depraved situations. And then if you have a society that is structured in such a way that people forget what is their ultimate goal in life, and they become caught up in thinking this short life is all that there is, then the society is depraved. No matter how sophisticated it seems, no matter how complicated it seems. So in this way, I hope you can get a handle on this whole topic of divine and depraved. demoniac nature. It's not something exotic or something fire and brimstone. Now in this verse, Krishna talks about attaining repeated birth amongst the species of demoniac life. Such persons can never approach me. Does it sound like eternal damnation, doesn't it? You burn forever. What this truly means is that never approaching means it will take such a long time. It's like never. But there's no eternal damnation in Bhagavad-gita. It's just that the time of your taking one birth after another is beyond your comprehension. Why would Krishna let us act in such a depraved way? That's the first thought that often comes to mind. Well, if Krishna is the supreme, he should stop me from acting in a depraved way. But you see, Krishna is supremely independent, and we, as part of Krishna, have all the qualities of Krishna, generally speaking, in a very tiny way. So Krishna is supremely independent, and we have very tiny independence to use or misuse. So Krishna doesn't interfere with our very tiny independence. So you might say, well, why not? Krishna, interfere with my independence. Make me divine. But how can there be love between God and us if there's no free choice? How many of you here want forced love? Raise your hands. Anyone here who's married? Okay. Suppose one day, you've been married how many years?
This is almost 12.
Almost 12 years. Suppose one day, after 12 years of marriage, your wife says to you, Atmanivedana, I have to confess, the reason why I married you was because I was forced to. How would you feel?
Blindsided.
Yes, because if you want to feel like you chose me because of my handsome looks, fine qualities, my spiritual nature. Right? And to find out that someone just chose you because they were forced to. You couldn't stomach that. So we don't want forced love. So why should Krishna have it? Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. How can the supreme enjoyer settle for forced love? So he puts you in situations where you can choose. Here we are in material existence because of our misuse of independence. We wanted to dream a life separate from Krishna. And the more we forget Krishna, the more we become trapped by depraved possibilities, which start out looking not so bad, and then we sink. This is the nature of entanglement. It's a very special Bhagavad Gita concept. That material existence is sticky. You think, I'll just stick my toe in, and then you get stuck. And your whole leg follows. The influences of material nature are very sticky and entangling. You just can't get away clean. It's always more than you bargained for. The example I was given the other night here was of a fly buzzing through the air, and it sees a piece of toast covered with honey. We're like that. Good, I see. So what happens when the fly lands on the piece of toast covered with honey? No doubt at first there's enjoyment, right? But very shortly thereafter, the fly becomes stuck in the honey. And the more it struggles and fights to get free, the more covered its legs and wings become with honey. So this is like our situation in material existence. We think we see possibilities for enjoyment. We're convinced it's there. I see it. I just have to fly a bit longer, work a bit harder. Bzz, I see it. I see the piece of toast covered with honey. And what happens all around you? Society encourages you. Yes, you do see it. It's there. Right? You got all that stimuli downloaded into you since birth. Right? All that mythology of material happiness has streamed into your consciousness since birth. If you want to be happy, do like this. If you want to be successful, do like that. You go to the movies, you see it on the screen. Oh, okay. Oh. You listen to the music, broadcasting messages into your skull, and you hear from your friends and family, right? You got to do this. Look at so-and-so. They're doing it. They're happy. So you are taking on all that influence from so many others. And that shapes your worldview, which you think is your own. But actually it's the product of so many external influences. So in this way, loaded up with all these stimulations from outside you, so much has been downloaded into you, you start seeing an illusion. I see it. I see material happiness. And everyone says, yeah, it's there. He's getting it, she's getting it, you can get it too. What's wrong with you? If you really want to shake up your family and friends, let's say you're at a family gathering, you simply start saying, you start to admit, I'm having problems with material happiness. Ooh, everyone looks at you. Hey, wait a minute. Let's hold on here. Or even worse is if you say, I think I'm a failure at material enjoyment. Hey, have another drink. If you're lonely, we'll fix you up with someone. Come on. Even though those same persons are having problems themselves, you never admit that. Just try harder, work harder, be patient, don't give up. So in this way, because of social influence, we hallucinate. We see a life of material opportunity. So again, we're discussing how could there be a chapter in Bhagavad-gita called divine and demoniac or depraved nature? How could that be? It's because we can go either way. This is why the advanced bhakti texts describe that we are marginal as original spiritual beings, we are Krishna's marginal energy. What does that mean? We can go either way due to our choice and association. And often your association makes your choice. The official Sanskrit term is tatastha shakti, marginal energy. Marginal means, indeed, margin. It can go either this side or that side. Like the beach. The beach is marginal, right? Why? Because sometimes the ocean covers the beach and sometimes it doesn't. So that beach itself is marginal. And we're like that. We're marginal. We can be covered by the illusory energy or not, depending on our choice. And our choice is mostly the outcome of our influences, the influences surrounding us. So therefore, in bhakti, it is so important to have proper association. We are creatures of association. So you might say, oh, okay, divine, demoniac nature. I'll never be demoniac. I may not be the greatest saint ever, but I'm never going to be demoniac, not me. But then you read the symptoms, and it gets kind of scary. Because we thought, well, lust is kind of an innocent personal thing, and yeah, everyone gets angry from time to time. Greed? Yeah, well, I like to shop. Someone told me that last night. Yeah, I'm greedy to shop and get beautiful things. But what's the harm? So we don't see how our precious human form of life is being wasted. We don't see that. And we don't see how a materialistic society is wasting our life for us. We take everything casually. Another example, given in this chapter, is that simply to focus on this life and not see it as part of a cycle of birth and death is depraved. You don't see that what you did in a previous life shapes this life. What you're doing in this life shapes the future life. In this way, you're actually envious of yourself. You're destroying your own possibilities. This life is all there is. Make merry while you can. As for what happens at the end of this body, there's nothing. You would think that persons who see death and in all its various ways, like an emergency room staff at the hospital, every day they're seeing mangled bodies and all kinds of disastrous situations. Or the fire department rescue squad. You would think, well, I saw that every day. I'd be very serious about living my life for the ultimate purpose. I wouldn't get swayed by temporary material pursuits. If I saw what they saw on a daily basis, I would be very serious about my spiritual development, right? No. I've heard from many such persons who work in emergency room at hospitals or fire department, rescue squad. Not all, but some. They say, seeing these tragedies happen every day to the body makes me want to enjoy every moment even more because it can end so quickly. We thought it's automatic that, hey, look, you're seeing such personal disasters, bodily disasters, day after day. You must be very serious about your spiritual life. No, you can go the other way. Seeing all that all those calamities every day makes me realize you gotta get it while you can. So this way I hope you can see the divine and depraved natures at work. It's all about what are you going to do with your human form of life. Having a human body is not an innocent thing. It's a great responsibility. The human body gives you a mandate. Politicians like to use that term, right? I've got a mandate from the people to... to what? We won't go into that. So just like politicians claim to have a mandate because of an election, similarly, the human body gives you a mandate. The intelligent human being has to think, I have this human body, I must become self-realized. Then your life can be divine. But by neglecting your responsibility as a human being, this is demoniac. The human body gives you that advanced consciousness by which we can have a discussion like we're having now. There's so many other bodies you could have taken. But you have a body that allows consciousness to the extent that you can inquire into what is the ultimate goal of life. It is proper human behavior to understand the tremendous responsibility that the human body gives. But this is not being taught. Therefore, from the viewpoint of Bhagavad-gita, such a human society in which the goal of human life is not taught is actually not human society. It's depraved, demoniac. So I hope you're now getting a better picture in your mind of what Bhagavad-gita is talking about when it says divine and demoniac nature. It's not talking about demoniac like Frankenstein or a vampire. It's talking about persons who misuse the most valuable treasure of having a human body. Wasting it. Then we have to consider not only this lifetime, but birth after birth. In this verse, Krishna says, Mudha Janmani Janmani. Birth after birth, you'll be a fool. Mudha is Sanskrit for fool. No one likes to be fooled, right? No one likes to be swindled. You don't want to admit it. I want to ask you, were you ever swindled or cheated in your life? No one likes to admit it. No, not me. I know what I'm doing. No one's ever pulled one on me. But, you know, this is New York. It happens to everyone, you know. So, to be a fool one time, you never forget it. Oh, why did I do that? Why couldn't I see what was going on? But birth after birth to be a fool. How could that happen? Krishna is explaining that because of the desire to forget Krishna and embrace illusion, you're put into such a situation that allows that birth after birth after birth. And therefore Krishna says, such persons can never approach me. Never meaning it's going to take such a long time, you can't calculate it. There's no eternal damnation, but it seems like eternity because it's so many births, so many lifetimes lost in darkness. Krishna explains, gradually they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. Why are there so many species of life? Why not just humans? They're animals, they're plants, they're fish, they're trees. These forms of life exist so that you can forget all about the Supreme Personality of God. You can be trapped in those kind of bodies and simply be absorbed in the body, and that's it. That's the great tragedy, to lose your human form of life. So then, if we consider a whole society that's pushing people in this way, we have to consider that the society is demoniac. So my point is, people are making their choices. But Krishna is merciful, especially Krishna as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the most merciful incarnation of Krishna, giving Krishna away even to those who have no interest in Krishna. Just like you say, at first, you didn't think anything. Even you saw them, right? Just didn't react, right? Just we're lost in your own affairs, right? What is the latest fashion I'll buy? What hairstyle will be next? You weren't thinking. But gradually, by repeated contact with devotees, you started to take notice. So this way I hope we can see how our independence, although so tiny, can be used or misused. Especially by what's around us, what's surrounding us. Yes.
I just dig inside, so we could benefit from your comments. Thank you, Maharaj. Sometimes when you hear that you are being controlled, always, like you do have independence, but you feel like in a lot of ways you're being controlled. And specifically, if you have to surrender, you're like very much controlled by Supreme Lord. So that feeling of resistance, periodically, when you read something or you hear something, it comes like some resistance inside, and you like fighting it. You understand that this is all Maya and ego and.
You have the ability to choose what influence you'll live under. But once you choose an influence, you're swept away. It's like, choose which river you're going to jump into. Once you jump into the river, though, it carries you away. If you jump into the material river, you're swept away. If you jump into the spiritual river, it carries you away because Krishna is unlimitedly attractive. So keep yourself spiritually fit so that you'll always choose to be carried away by Krishna. All right. Shall we have some kirtan? How do you do it?
It would be nice if you would lead kirtan if you.
All right.